What we're going to talk about now is the labor-leisure budget constraint. We've already taken a look at the consumption choice budget constraint. We have a bit of an understanding of how that works. What we're about to show is that we don't need to just look between two goods, but there are other reasons that we can use this whole idea of the budget constraint. Remember that our time is limited. In any given week, we are all constrained by time. There are 168 hours in any given week. Now, some of those hours are already decided for us. We already know what we're going to do, and that's going to be sleep. The average human needs 8 hours of sleep a day. That's a third of your week. 1/3 of 168. That's about 56 hours going to be devoted to sleep. Other than sleep, we have to take time out to eat, to commute, to use the toilet, to bathe, whatever. There are other things in a week that we have to do. Because our time is limited, and because we want an income with which to buy goods and services, we must choose what we would rather do: provide labor time or take leisure time. So let's go ahead and draw our budget constraint. Just as with our consumption choice, we're going to start with our axis here. On the y-axis, we're going to be measuring our income. On our x-axis, we're going to be measuring two things. These two things are opposites of one another. We're going to be measuring from 0 to 60, and from 60 to 0. And the two things that we're measuring are labor hours and leisure hours. For uniformity's sake, we're going to put labor hours on the bottom, and we're going to put leisure hours on the top. This is so they're going to look like our other budget constraints. What else we need to know is we need to know the wage that we're being offered. And for the sake of this example, we're being offered $10 an hour to work. $10 per hour. Now you see down here that on the far left end we have 0 leisure hours and 60 labor hours. On the far right end, we have 60 leisure hours and 0 labor hours. Right in the middle, we'd have 30 leisure hours, 30 labor hours. They're always going to add up to this 60 because that is the maximum number of hours that we can work in this example. If we're not taking a leisure hour, we're providing a labor hour. If we're not providing a labor hour, we're taking a leisure hour. So let's find out what our endpoints are going to be. First, let's start over here. If we took 60 leisure hours and worked 0 labor hours, how much money would we make in any given week? The answer, yes, is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. So one end of the spectrum is going to be 0 income. Now, how about if we worked 60 hours a week and had 0 hours of leisure time? Well, we'd take our $10 an hour times 60 hours and we find out that we made $600. So this is the other end. We can go ahead and connect these two. They are linearly related. That means that, say that we worked 40 hours a week, and we'll also look at 20 hours a week. We'd see that we'd earn $400 here, $200 here. Now in this case, any point on this line is going to be an acceptable choice. If you've worked before, you don't always just put in an even number of numbers. You know, if you have a computerized punch system, you see that, oh, you can work a 1/10 of an hour, an 1/8 of an hour, you know, whatever, any sort of number of an hour, and they'll pay you right for it. Now, Are you going to choose to work at a point right here where you're working about 40 hours a week and making $200? No, of course you're not going to. Why? Because you're not making as much money in that case as you are able to, and you're not going to sell yourself short. Are you going to be able to work at a point where you're working only 20 hours a week and making $400? The answer again is no. Somebody is not offering you $20 an hour to work. So in your best interest is to work somewhere on this budget constraint. You'd love to get it beyond it, but unless there's an increase in your wage, it's not going to happen. And you do not want to work beneath your budget constraint. The main type of change that we could see in this budget constraint is going to be through a change in wage. Let's show what happens when the wage increases to $12 an hour. If we were to go ahead and work 60 hours in a week at $12 an hour, our wage would be $720. If we worked 0 hours at $12 an hour, our income would still be $0. So we're still at this point here. So let's go ahead and connect the dots. And you'll see that our budget constraint has rotated. Budget constraint 1, budget constraint wage change. Our budget constraint has rotated much like our consumption choice budget constraint rotated when we changed the price of one of the goods. There's also a possibility to have a parallel shift in this labor leisure budget constraint, but that would include having to change the number of hours that you're able to work in any given week. If you increase it to 80 hours, the budget constraint shifts parallel to the right. If you say, okay, now you can only work 40 hours in a week, the budget constraint shifts to the left. Looking back at this original budget constraint, which point are we going to choose? Well, as I ask people in the classroom, they always give me different answers. So again, it depends on personal preferences. If you value income over free time, you'll work more labor hours than you'll lounge leisure hours. If you value your free time over income, you'll lounge more leisure hours than you'll work labor hours. When we have this change from one budget constraint to the other, there's a personal preference that's going to come in here. Now, there are some people out there that say we're working 40 hours a week for $400. There are some people who are in a groove. They're in rhythm. They like working 40 hours a week. It fits their schedule. So they're going to go ahead and probably work more or work the same amount and be paid more. There are other people out there that might say, I just need $400 to pay the bills. So if I can work less hours in a week, I'm going to. And then there are other people out there that might say, well, heck, my time, the more of my time I'm going to give up now that it is worth $12 an hour, and maybe I'm going to work more hours and make more money. Everyone's personal choice is going to be different. And that's the important thing to take away.